This is
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.
a podcast from Red Hawk Publications.
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening out there in podcast land. This is Robert Knipe coming to you live from the plush welded studios of Catawba Valley Community College. It is another episode of RedPubPod from Red Hawk Publications. I'm here today with my graphic artist par excellence, Melanie Zimmerman, with the multiple N's at the end. And today we are going to talk to two wonderful local creatives, poet Scott Owens and photographer, bar none, Clayton Joe Young. So how you fellas doing today?
Doing well, thanks. Pretty good.
Or tonight or next week or whenever people are listening to this podcast. These guys have a new book coming from Red Hawk Publications called Round Here, Images from and Near Catawba County, and it's poems by Scott Owens and photographs by Clayton Joe Young. Let me remind you about who these guys are. Scott Owens is the author of 20 collections of poetry and recipient of awards from the Academy of American Poets. His poems have been featured on the Writer's Almanac 8 times. He holds degrees from Ohio University, UNC Charlotte, and UNC Greensboro, and he is also the owner and operator of Taste Full Beans Coffeehouse and Gallery in Hickory, North Carolina, and you're also the coordinator of Poetry Hickory. How many years have we had Poetry Hickory?
We are in our 18th year now.
18 years of that second Tuesday in every month.
Yep.
That's wonderful. Clayton Joe Young is the author of 11 books and is an award-winning photographer with a background in photojournalism. In 2014, Young earned the Certified Professional Photographer's designation from Professional Photographers of America. And in 2015, earned an MFA in photography from Savannah College of Art and Design. And Joe has worked with Red Hawk a lot. Scott has published quite a few books through Red Hawk Publications, but Joe has worked with us with students, taking photographs for the Newton Then and Now book, the Hickory Then and Now book, the Salem Lutheran Church book that we just did. What else, Joe?
Ridgeview.
Yeah, the Ridgeview work we did. Henry River Mill Village was like one of the first ones that we worked on.
Nimble and Tenacious.
Oh, yes, Nimble and Tenacious, the history of Catawba Valley Community College. All of these books are available on redhawkpublications.com, where you can visit any time of the day or night. And if you use FALL23, that's FALL23 at your end of cart work, you will receive 25% off your entire cart. So, round here, fellas, how did this collaboration come about?
I think it was my idea. I don't know exactly. Well, in the coffee shop, Joe and I had done a collaboration years ago called Country Roads. And it was he had sent me a bunch of photos and asked me if I could write poems to go with them. And so it was kind of driven by the photos at that time. And up at the coffee shop, we've had copies of the book available. And I would see people looking at them, and then they would come up quite often and say, hey, where is that house? And I would say, well, you'd have to ask Joe, because I don't know exactly. I think that one's in Iredell County. And they'd say, well, I thought it was here in Catawba County. I've seen a house that looks just like that here in Catawba County. And I said, no, I think that one's in Iredell County. And then they'd walk out without buying the book. And I think after enough times of that, I thought, well, I need a book where I can say, yeah, that's here in Catawba County. So, and over the years, I had been writing plenty of poems about Catawba County locations. So I finally reached out to Joe and said, hey, let's do another book, but let's do it the opposite way. I've got all these poems, and some of them I know you have photos that go with them because I've seen the photos in some of the books that you've already mentioned, like West of Mercy is one that I saw, and The Birdhouse. And so I just reached out to Joe and asked him about it, and he said, yeah, I'm so busy I couldn't possibly do another book, but okay, let's do it anyway.
Yeah, it's much harder with this book. It was a lot easier taking a lot of pictures and just giving them to him. And it's a little bit harder going the other way around. One thing, and also I brought back, usually I bring my students in every year, and we take pictures of downtown Hickory, and we were doing like an alphabet series, and he saw that, and that kind of gave him an idea, too, to get started on this publication.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I noticed back in the acknowledgments, Scott, that some of the poems have appeared before. In fact, there's a poem in this book that comes from your book that you did for us. Oh, blast, I can't find it now.
Is it the acknowledgments? Oh, you're at the
Yeah,
end.
there's
Okay.
Prepositional and Sky Full of Stars and Dreaming. So some of the poems are from there. So, Joe, these photographs have not appeared anywhere else.
There's a couple of them that have.
Okay, but the majority of them are where you've
They're
gone
all,
out and
yeah, most of them are new photographs I've taken in the last year.
okay, because the book is a really nice size. It's an 8.5 by 11 full size portrait book, and it's in full color with the best paper that the printer will allow. So it presents very, very well. Scott, there's a poem in here called Mill Village. And there's a photograph of the Henry River Mill Village. Other poets have tried to tackle Henry River Mill Village. What made you want to tackle Henry River Mill Village?
Well, I think at a certain point in writing the poems or gathering the poems, it just kind of seemed to me like we should have a poem about most, you can never do all, but most familiar, recognizable sites in Catawba County. And if I'm traveling and talking to people about Catawba County and what they ought to do if they're going to visit Catawba County, at least driving through Henry River Mill Village is one of the things I always mention. Everyone has the association with District 12 from
Hunger Games.
Yeah, thank you, Hunger Games. The older I get, the more often I have to do that, and I'm
my
always
God.
happy to have people around who will fill in the words for me.
Oh, you'll have to fill in words for everybody because I do the same thing.
And I can remember the process on a lot of these. This photo already existed, I believe, and I saw it somewhere. I don't exactly remember in which book I saw it, or it might have been on, Joe has some prints that he keeps up at the shop available to sell as well. It might have been on one of those, but I did think it was the perfect picture to go with the poem.
Clayton Joe Young is nodding.
That's from it's from a book with Tim Peeler that we did, one of our first publication.
We see what we want to see,
that
Okay.
picture
which
was
is
in it.
one of the earliest publications from Red Hawk Publications where Tim Peeler had. Now, remind me, Joe, were those poems that you went and took pictures, or were those pictures where Tim wrote the poems?
It was kind of both.
Kind of both?
Worked off each other with that one.
And this was also before the property had been purchased by the investors, Calvin Reyes and his family. So a lot of it was run down, and it didn't seem like it was long for the world.
I was worried the book wasn't the only thing that lasts of the place. That's one of the reasons I worked really hard on that one.
Yeah, we figured that might be the last remnant of Henry River Mill Village, but apparently the Reyes family has decided to keep it, and they are slowly but surely, making it a place that people want to go, a destination.
It's nice when there's a happy ending to something like that, where instead of going to ruin it, it's picking itself back up.
Exactly. We were able to get something in that book right before it went to press that let everybody know that it had been saved.
I think that the Mill Village and that photo in particular, I mean, if you came to this book without any prior knowledge of Henry River Mill Village and you looked at the photo, you would think that this was a photo from 1930s, perhaps. There's nothing in this photo that says, hey, this is 2023. And that's one of the things that was my motivation for this book, was the way in which Hickory and Catawba County, in a larger sense, has retained history. I lived for 10 years in Charlotte, and not to say anything bad about Charlotte, but the modus operandi in Charlotte was anytime they needed a new space, they would just knock down whatever old was there.
Right.
And in Hickory, we don't seem to do that. We transform old into something new while retaining some character from the old as well. And so I appreciate that about Henry River Mill Village. I appreciate that about Hickory and Catawba in general. And so
That leads to the question that I have about your chapters in here, your separators. We have the first section is called Used To, USED, and then capital TO, Used To. And then we have, after that, Still, STILL. Then we have a section called Web
Work.
Web work.
Yeah, Web Work. And then, is that the last section, Melanie?
Yes.
Yeah. What do those names and what do those sections represent to the person going through this book?
There was one final section called Keeper.
Oh, Keeper, yeah.
Oh, Keeper.
Sorry.
Okay.
And, I don't know that a writer can ever answer that question adequately, because when they're creating, they probably know exactly why they choose that. And as time goes on, it takes on additional meaning. I tell my students that whatever the writer thought they were saying doesn't really matter, because 10 minutes after they thought they said it, their mind has changed, their life has changed, their identity has changed. So the words don't mean quite what they did at the time that they said it or wrote it. And I think that's the case with anything. Used to, I really like that, because it is just by itself, it has double meaning. You can talk about things that you are used to, things that are familiar, and that certainly plays a role in the poems and photos that we have in this book. But it's also, this is how things used to be. So it has a double meaning right off, and both of those meanings work very well with what we have going on in this book and in these poems. And if you went through it, I couldn't tell you now without going back and looking, but I know the phrase used to is used at least 3 or 4 times in poems in the book, and usually either at the very beginning or the very end of the poem. There's one poem called Used To.
Yeah, there's one poem. Yeah, I like that poem. I like that poem a lot.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of my favorite pieces of work in here. It's a poem called Thinking About the Next Big Bang in the Galaxy at the Edge of Town.
Yeah.
And then there's one in here about the streets, the street names and things like that.
Is it Lost in Hickory?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's the one. And that's where I kind of applied that idea of used to, because that's how we give directions around here.
Yeah.
You say you have to go down here where old Hutto's store used to be.
Yeah.
And turn left by the tree that used to be there that was struck by lightning in 1951. And
Well, see, that's how you can tell how long somebody's lived here, because you could say going from Springs Road to Lenore Ryan, well, you know where the old Tasty Freeze used to be. Well, no, if they didn't know that, well, do you remember it being the ABC store? And if they don't know that, well, do you know where Substation 2 is? Yes, I know where that is. Well, you've been here for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's you can't get anywhere in Hickory without a landmark. That's just the way it is.
Definitely one we can all relate to with the street names, too. I don't know what they come up to.
that's
This,
why that's
this
such
poem
a,
actually, the poem that with the title Used To actually begins with a story that I've told over and over again. And this was true in backwoods South Carolina, where I grew up. I once heard my grandfather give directions to someone saying, turn left right there where so-and-so used to keep his goat tied out under that oak tree.
There you go. There
And
you go.
The goat had been dead for years, the man had been dead for years, and the tree had been knocked down in the last couple of years. So none of those things were still there,
Yeah.
but that was how they gave directions. And in Hickory, nobody gives directions with street numbers, because you can't say go through the intersection of 2nd and 2nd, and then 2 blocks later go through the intersection of 2nd and 2nd again without people thinking that you've lost your mind. So
That's right. And the poem Used To is faced with one of our famous then and now photographs from downtown Hickory, where Joe, do you remember what the older photo was that you borrowed in this?
I believe it was something I got from the Catawba History Museum.
Okay.
We did a book where we did that book with we did one with Hickory. We did one with Newton, but there were some pictures of Hickory also there.
Okay.
Some I got from the Patrick Beaver Library also.
Okay, so because what the then and now photographs usually do, what Joe's students have done in the past is they find an older photograph of some kind of architecture or something interesting in the town. We've done it in Newton and Hickory. And then they go to the place where the photograph was taken, get as close to the exact same angle as they possibly can, shoot a new picture. So we've got 2 presentations of that particular area. Then they go into Photoshop and they merge the two together to kind of give you a then and now kind of look, and sometimes even show you what Scott was talking about, how the architecture does not change over many, many years.
It's the fun part of that. Some of these places, again, they look familiar, but it's been torn down. I like it when people are interacting with the two pictures, like from the old picture to the new. It's a lot of fun even finding out where the photographer stood, the time of year, the angle, like the focal length. And it's a kind of exciting process. And then blending the two together is a lot of fun, too. That's a challenge, but fun.
And this is something that really Joe started in the original Henry River Mill Village book, where Joe was taking Polaroids and photographs and photographing the area that the original photograph was taken, and then placing on that photograph the older photograph, and then taking a third photograph, which made it look like the people who were in the photograph on the front porch were sitting on that front porch. And then we decided to carry it a little further, and Joe says, it'll be excellent for the students to play with that. So we've had so much fun with that.
I really enjoy doing that. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of
I
fun.
love seeing it in this book to give people an opportunity to see that process and understand how that works.
I thought about doing one in Alexander County. I was talking to the library there, and they have a pretty big archive, and that might be the next one for the students to work on.
Yeah, we would love for Alexander County to want to do a book.
Well, what's cool about what you're saying is that type of photography shows how history persists. You know, and we don't think about the past being present in the present, but it always is. And that's a big part of what's going on in this book, in the poems and the photographs. There are several poems in here about trails. This is the Year of the Trail, has been declared as the Year of the Trail, and of course this coincides with Hickory doing an awful lot of work on City Walk and Art Walk and the Book Walk and all these different urban trails. And it goes back to the fact that this whole area was initially settled, if you will, because of an intersection of Native American trails. So from the beginning, this area has been about trails, and here we are now, in a sense, overlaying trails across the history of trails.
Marvelous, yes. Yes, the Hickory Tavern originally was set up with the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
So you've got trails of the railroad tracks there. And even recently on this, for this poem you've got in here called Still, Joe has got a photograph of, this is the back of, what business is this the back of in downtown Hickory?
That's the old Hickory Brewery where they actually do the brewing.
Okay. There was just a post on Facebook of somebody trying to raise money to redo that advertisement for Royal Crown Cola.
I've never even noticed that advertising you told me, and I had to really kind of look at it, and I use like a polarized lens to help me see it. But that's something I pass every day and never notice.
Yeah. Well, they call them ghost. What is it? Ghost prints, ghost
signs, or
ghost signs. That's it. Ghost signs. Yeah, because it used to be very common to paint brick walls as a form of advertising, and you still see it if you go into really old towns or just places that no one ever removed the painting. And we have one here in Hickory. And that's, again, ironic because the most popular thing going around in Hickory and just about any other town right now is the creation of murals. Well, that was a commercial mural, but it's still a mural.
Yeah, because it retains an older logo for a soft drink that most people in the area are familiar with, because you've got your RC Cola, that's the Royal Crown Cola, RC and a moon pie type thing. And there's one on Old Lenore Road, there's an old automobile plant or something that's got Rambler on the side of it, that ghost letters are still existing there. And there's Edsel somewhere on that same thing. So you've got these cars that aren't manufactured anymore, but there's their logos. So the past is present
Still here.
at the same time. So when you spot an intriguing image, how long does it take you, or how complicated is your process to capture that image as you imagine it? And what makes me think of that is the image of the looking down on the picture of tea and the interesting composure or composition of that photograph and the bubbles in around the ice. The ice is clearly not brand new ice. It's been in the tea for a while.
You got to let it soak for a while, right?
Yeah. How do you just click a lot of them at once, or is there a process you go through where you say?
I think it's like that for anything. Like even a lot of these places, he gives me a location, and even like that Starbaker Playground, I went back to several times, and I just kind of reevaluate it. Like the first time, I might just here's a picture of tea, and then I'll just start looking for lines and shapes, and somebody designed that picture. Like there's an artist involved with it originally. And look for something different, like a different angle perspective. That's why there's some drone shots in the book that give people a different perspective of places like the Bunker Hill Covered Bridge. They haven't seen it that way before. So a lot of times just thinking of some new way to looking at things. It might be a bird's eye view or a worm's eye view, but just trying to show something that everybody recognizes, but it looks different.
Okay, because even the logo of this book that is on the pre-title and the title page, the words "round here" are found items that spell out the title of the book. They look like an R. The item looks like an O. We have railings. We have. Is that like a Duke Power?
It's on that little trade alley if you walk around behind it.
Electric
Okay.
meter.
Yeah.
Oh, an electric meter of some kind or a light meter of some kind. How do you do this?
The way I try to look at everything, I look at partially if I was going to draw something, the shapes it would make. But you got to look at things abstractly if you're going to be a photographer to kind of get past that, like, oh, this is a power box or whatever. Try to look at what else can it be, or can it look like something else? And that's kind of what got us started with this book. I showed Scott some pictures, and I made a whole poster of it. And our students do it every year. It's a good challenge for them because they walk by this stuff and they don't like, oh, look, there's an R, and it's like going to Disney World and you see the hidden Mickeys everywhere. That's a good way to see things differently, to look, being a more creative eye.
I think it's interesting that, both of the creatives we have in here today, you guys are both observational. Your art is based in, Joe, what you observe and then what you can change the perspective. Scott, your poetry, and I mean, in every book you've done, there's observational stuff that you turn everyday items, everyday places, everyday things into oftentimes metaphor, allegorical aspects. This is one of the reasons why I grew up when I was a little kid, and I mean before I was 5, we lived in Longview, and the old fresh air. That's what my parents called it. The fresh air was where we shopped, and I remember as a kid being amazed at the doors that opened automatically and things like that. And you've got a poem in here, and now I can't find it again.
That's the one you mentioned earlier, the galaxy at the edge of town.
Yes.
And of course, if you're from the Hickory area, then you recognize that we're not talking about the galaxy as in the universe. We're talking about the galaxy as in the fresh air galaxy.
Yes, but I'm wondering about the photograph that Joe chose or you guys chose to go along with that. Guys, we have got to go back to Melanie. We got to go back to print on this and put page numbers in it.
Talk to the authors.
Can't find it. Hey guys, is it okay if I put some page numbers?
Just a layout. Are you looking for the jar of lightning bugs?
Yes,
Yeah.
It's the jar of lightning
But it's
bugs.
not lightning bugs.
Well, it looks like lightning bugs to
Oh,
me.
here it is. Here it is. It's on page. No. Scott, I wish you would read this for us.
I'm trying to find it now myself.
Closer to the back of the book.
Is it? That's what I thought was in the back.
It's
but I
kind of in the
started.
middle.
Okay.
Kind of in the middle, kind of. And if you really look for the picture, because my question is, how does this illustration speak to this poem? And
This is one that we kind of cheated on. That was a book cover for my book by that title. I don't know how many years ago it's been. Yeah. Here.
Okay, so
I'm failing.
this photograph, I think
There
you're
it
past. There you go.
Okay. So thinking about the next big bang in the galaxy at the edge of town is the name of the poem and the name of the book from years ago. And I wanted to use that play on the idea of a grocery store being called the Galaxy, and how to a child's perspective, something like a grocery store could represent a galaxy.
That's great.
So in the galaxy at the edge of town, there is still plenty of fresh air. Space is abundant. Light is spread evenly everywhere. Children keep rattling wheels moving forward. The machinery of produce continues. 7 languages are spoken. A homeless man seeks shelter, jacket pulled tight around him, orbs of eyes concealed beneath rings of his hat's brim. Stock boys wait for beauty to descend and need them. They dream constellations in their hands, spin cans to face the front. Potentialities, polarities, cosmic design are all worked out in the commerce of heavenly bodies. Everything moves in perpetual orbit. A man walking between rows wonders at the infinity of choice spread out before him, thinks one day decisions won't matter. At closing time, they walk towards the black hole of windows, afraid of no gravity but their own.
That's just marvelous. That's just
Thank you.
wonderful word choice. I just love this. Potentialities, polarities, cosmic design are all worked out in the commerce of heavenly bodies.
I'm
That's
old
great.
enough to remember when you could go into a grocery store and it was so much smaller, and they would have 1 or 2 brands of the same item, if you will, and that was it. Now you go into a grocery store and it seems endless. It's immense. And I think most people, 10 years younger than I am, that's what they've grown to expect. Anything less than that is a convenience store. It's not a grocery store. And I'm just amazed at how sometimes we can be dissatisfied when we have that many choices of oatmeal or peanut butter or whatever it is you want. You've got all these choices presented to you now. It's like we have a universe of choice every time we go out.
And that's exactly the way we see the universe ever since we've been able to see all of the galaxies. And we've had Carl Sagan say to us, there are billions and billions of galaxies. Well, there's billions and billions of choices in the grocery store. How many cereals can you really consume at one time? How many brands of coffee is there? And we could say the same for books. It's like I buy books sometimes hoping that I'm buying the time to read them more than I am actually, buying the book to actually read.
Well, speaking about the universe, your poem Address.
Mm-hmm.
I like the last line where you end it. You said, I can always only live in one particular place at one particular time. When you go through the process of creating a poem, what inspires you to write that poem? What inspired you to write that one in particular?
I think like everyone who spends any time in Hickory, you become kind of fascinated with the street names. And yes, you laugh at the street names, and then every once in a while you realize, well, wait a minute, though. I mean, if you think about it, the specificity of 838 4th, not just Avenue, but Avenue Drive, not just Avenue Drive, but Avenue Drive Northwest. It's like the grid is drawn and you can pinpoint it. It could only be right here, right here. And there's something about that specificity that says, embrace that. So be there at that moment in time and really embrace it, recognize it, enjoy everything that it has to offer. There's a huge irony, and I have to apologize to someone. We put this book together before my father-in-law really decided that we were going to move. And this poem begins, I live at 838 4th Avenue Drive Northwest. And as of today, that's no longer true. We closed on that house today.
Oh.
So my apologies go out to the family that has bought this house. And I
Someone's going to walk up, it's got home.
I hope that won't be the case.
Oh,
but-
my God, I hope somebody's not tapping on their windows one night. Is this where the poet lives?
She could tell them that was true, but all things change. And
I think that's interesting. That speaks to it's specific. You be there in that place, but around here you can't find it. It's very specific. It's 50th Avenue Circle Northeast,
Yeah.
but you can't find it.
No.
So is there something cosmic about that?
It seems like half of them are one-way streets too, so you gotta.
Oh, I know. Make sure you look for the signs and the direction the cars are going.
And thank God the GPS now knows, because early GPS did not seem to pay attention to one-way streets. But the GPS now knows when something's a one-way street where it doesn't have you going down the wrong way.
Yeah.
I've done that before, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I had a police car one time.
Oh, my goodness. I remember when they changed Highland Avenue used to be two-way, and now it's one-way. And the 9th Street going towards Lenoir there at the Tasty Freeze, that used to be two ways, too.
Yep.
At the Tasty Freeze that's no longer there.
No longer there.
It
It used to be the ABC store, but now it's the substation.
Now it's a substation because the ABC stores increased in size to where the ABC stores are just like the grocery stores. How many kinds of vodka are there?
Yeah, you would think that a book being published right now would be completely up to date. But we were talking about the poem Used To earlier, and I realized just the other day, let's see, down here in the poem it says, they're talking about old buildings, and the Hickory News Building in this poem has been changed to Beyond Appearance.
Right. I used to work there.
It's no longer Beyond Appearance.
Yeah, it's somebody else now has
Right.
purchased it. Yeah.
So even before this book is published, things are not what they used to be.
Yeah.
So,
The same thing happened with the Newton Then and Now book.
yeah.
We spotlighted a couple of businesses in the Newton Then and Now book that were out of business before the book came out. And moreover, the day after the book came out, they brought a bunch of heavy machinery down to Newton and completely changed the square around the courthouse from how it originally was. The same thing kind of happened with the Hickory book when we started doing the plans for it. They were tearing up downtown Hickory, and I think some of your folks were shooting around some of that construction and things like that down there. So, Melanie, can you talk to us a little bit about the layout of this book and did you run into any problems, or was it a joy to do? Or?
I had the best time with this book, mainly because I was working with Joe. I didn't get to work with Scott very often, except towards the end, but
That's because Scott was moving because he told everybody where he lived. He didn't want people coming up there trying to borrow money.
But it was a lot of fun to work with Joe because I started out as a photographer. And so Joe and I we had sort of the same language and, but Joe is classically trained and I'm what's called guerrilla photography trained because I was in newspaper. And I would shoot concerts and I'd be in the pit and, that kind of thing. So my stuff was not artistic like Joe's is. So we have two different ways of shooting. I shoot emotionally. So, but I had a lot of fun with Joe going through, his photographs and he could look at something and say, okay, that looks like that's not, that's not clear enough or, the sky's not blue enough or we're losing the clouds. And I was trying to explain to him about when we print, it's going to come out darker or I lightened it up just a little. And he went back and toned his photographs for me. And so we sort of got that down pat and coming up with the idea of the layout. Joe and Scott pretty much had their layout in place, didn't you?
Pretty much.
And so you had your own idea of the way things were looking. When you start doing a layout like that, how do you put it together? Do you thumbnail it? How do you?
What I'm trying to do originally is just trying to match the poem with the photo. I just want them on facing pages for each other. So when he can look at them, I can look at them. So I just usually create some kind of document where I can put them face to face. And it'd be nice sometimes if it would kind of work out where they're the same format. We had to change a little bit, but that's the first thing is like you let him look at it. They think the two respond to each other, and it lets me kind of know what else I need to work on. Not as kind of a mess when he's got a list of poems and trying to pick out which picture goes to what.
So Scott, whenever you're, for instance, Web Works, that poem, and it's the picture of the spider web in the corner of the porch.
Right.
What inspired, when you look at that photograph, are you inspired by that to write a poem, or what inspired you to write that poem so that Joe could match it?
Well, that poem, I love spider webs, and I love seeing them as you do in that photo, particularly when they're like outlined with dew. I think they're just beautiful. And, of course, if you live anywhere around here, you're going to have seen spider webs. So the poem was actually written from an actual spider web that I encountered one morning. And but Joe can go from the words to finding the perfect photograph. And sometimes I would point him in a direction, like my favorite photo. I'll say that. I have probably 4 or 5 favorites, but one of my absolute favorites is the one that goes with a study of steeples.
Oh, yeah, I love that photograph.
And I knew that Joe had plenty of steeple photographs already. I had seen many of them. But I was just driving home from the coffee shop and drove by this steeple, which is First Baptist downtown. And I think I was on 3rd Street.
Yeah, 3rd Street, yeah.
And I glanced over my left shoulder, and you could see the steeple through the lacework, if you will, of this winter tree. And I thought, that's breathtaking. So I texted Joe and said, hey, Joe, I know you already have a photo for this, but listen, this is a great opportunity. I think this one might really be good. And Joe is great. He's gone to locations where I've told him, oh, there's a great photo if you could take it. Because I'm terrible with photos. I might see it, but I can't translate it into a camera at all. And so when I saw this, it's like, that's just perfect. That's like exactly what I think should be there. That's so wonderful.
And I like the peach colors and the grays, and it looks like it is a winter photograph without even knowing that that's what that is.
Right.
And see what's beautiful about this photograph? The colors are so subtle in this that you don't see them the first time you look at it. They come upon you slowly, almost like they're seeping out.
Yeah, like it's the watercolor seeping through.
And you begin to see it. And this is hard to do, ladies and gentlemen, out there in podcast land, in a book that is printed hundreds and hundreds of miles away in a commercial fashion of mass marketing, where the machines are running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to actually get the subtle intention that the photographer intends. And in this case, in this photograph, it worked because it's there. And I think that's part of the back and forth with the layout artist and the photographer.
Talking to Melanie, when you went over there, I redid every single picture from scratch. And I try to match it up the way you're explaining it to me.
Yeah.
Because I wanted them to look a certain way, and I think they came out really well.
I think they did.
Because what we're doing, folks out there who don't know how this business works, is we get something called a galley proof. The actual printer will send us an example of what the book is going to look like, so we have it in our hands and we're able to experience it the same way that the reader does. And in doing that, we're able to look and see how are their machines calibrated, how do their machines see red, how do their machines see cyan, how do their machines see yellow. And we can then go into Photoshop or some other program, or what do you use, Joe, to
It's Lightroom and Photoshop, both Adobe programs.
And we're able to change the image to make up for any loss or any inadequacy that the printer may have. And in doing that, we kind of go, wow, now we've got what we really want.
Yeah, you kind of have to exaggerate some of the stuff or make it a little more contrasty than normally because of the way the printers are set up. And no two printers are alike. So we could print that book on 3 different printers and it would look different.
Because the book, being a mass-produced book, it's not one of these expensive, $150 hardcover.
It's not an offset book.
Yeah, where it is printed and it's watched and it's perfect and all the CMYK is measured and the machine that it's on, they use a densitometer on a daily basis to be able to check the color. These are machines that are just put through the ringer. Yeah. And they're rarely ever stopped for maintenance or calibration.
It'd be nice to have one of those books, but I'd rather have something that's affordable that the general public can get and enjoy.
And at $35 is what this book runs. And again, you can use our coupon of Fall 23 on RedHawkPublications.com to pre-order the book. The book will be here sometime about a week or so after this podcast drops.
And you would pay that much for a single print.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, my God,
and now
you pay more than that.
You've got the chance to buy a book with 60 wonderful photos.
Absolutely.
Like this one, the Looking for Faces in the Night Sky.
That's one of my favorites
I love
as well.
that one, too.
The one that I
describe that to the listeners. What is that image? What does that image show?
See if you know, and I'll tell you what it is.
It's snow. No snow?
I shot it out. I shot it here on campus.
Oh, really?
It's either snow or rain.
Nope.
Nope. I give up.
Let's have
It's
a
the parking lot.
contest.
It's the double exposure. That's the
Oh,
parking
double
lot.
exposure. Okay.
So that's the trees and the parking lot overlaid.
Oh, okay.
It looks like snow
It
or
does
sky.
look like snow. Okay, now I see the asphalt. Yeah.
And there is a marvelous portrait of a mule
That was
in
fun.
this book that is just beautiful. It's an 8.5 by 11 photograph of a mule. There's like, Melanie, you just did like one full bleed section in this
Yeah,
book,
just
and
the
that's
third
the road
street,
signs.
3rd Street Northwest, 3rd Avenue.
Yeah, for the poem about
third and third.
The longest poem in the book is the "Why so many of those who are lost in Hickory stay that way forever."
Yeah.
And Melanie had to bump the photograph over, so she decided to do a full bleed spread on the thing, which had its own challenges with our printers.
Well, and I love how you did the layout for the ontology of rivers as well.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
With the photographs.
That's a
spreading
gorgeous
across
photograph.
yeah,
Yeah.
pages
Is that
and
one of the
poem
one that
underneath.
bleeds into
Yeah.
the gutter and
Yeah.
goes onto the other page?
It's got this, the full half, the top half is a full
Oh,
bleed.
It
We can
conveys
see-
that sense of how rivers just go on forever.
We can sit here. There's also a beautiful portrait of are these daisies? I'm not.
I think they're,
I'm not
aren't
a
they
herpetologist.
black-eyed
I think
Susans?
Black Eyed Susans.
Black-eyed Susans. Where were these shot, Joe? Do you remember?
It's over at Hart Square.
Over at Hart Square? Okay. So instead of us sitting here just, describing them to you, why don't you go to redhawkpublications.com and buy you a copy of your own, and I will ship it to you as soon as it gets here. Oh, there's the one that,
the
with the
ontology of
fog.
rivers, yeah.
the
That was
fog
a
on
drone
top
shot
of
too. I
That's a
love
drone
driving
shot.
by the river and seeing that fog lift up.
So the drone, the advent of the drone has really given photography a brand new realm of perspective that it didn't have before.
Yeah, there's several pictures. Again, like the Bunker Hill one, like I've seen the same picture. Like I want something different.
So how did you shoot something like that before? Did you have to go in an airplane or? you have
Yeah, I
rent
used
a
to do that. You said to
helicopter?
rent a plane or a helicopter.
Yeah.
I've done quite a bit of that too. And it was a lot trickier because, you're
You're moving.
moving around, shaking.
Well, you have
A lot
a
of
print up at the coffee shop right now that I'm guessing is probably a drone shop. It's shot. It's a considerably high aerial view of the Bunker Hill
Yeah.
Bridge. Yeah, and
I really
it's-
like that because it looks very abstract. It looks like almost like spider webs. The way
If
the
you don't
trees-
know what you're looking at, I mean, you have to look at it to figure out what it is. Otherwise, it does just look like an abstraction, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
See, that's what makes photography art right there. That's what brings the art to photography is when you look at it and then you realize the brilliance behind that image and what it has taken to bring that image to life.
Well, I'm going to add to that because you've all talked about perspective, you've talked about color, and I want you to look at the one that goes with the poem Pinwheel. There
Oh, yeah.
are, you would think, since I wrote most of these poems, that I would be immune to the emotional element. But every time I read the poem Pinwheel, I'll cry. And I know it's because of the photograph. And he found just the perfect, I think, how many times did you go to take that photo?
I probably went over there 3 times.
Yeah.
And it took about that many times to get what I felt I needed.
He would send me a shot, and I was like, well, it's nice, but it's not quite right. And then he would go back. He was willing to go back and try again. And he finally got this perfect perspective looking up through the wheels, if you will, of the pinwheel to the blue sky and the clouds above that, to me, just convey the feeling that the poem and the whole story of Zara Baker kind of conveys.
I probably did take 100 of that one. I tried every angle around that sculpture.
And if you look at the colors that he captured in the sculpture itself, I mean, most of us think of it, it's a metal sculpture. But
Is it
there's-
brushed? Is it a brushed metal? It looks like it's brushed metal.
I don't think it is. It might be.
Well,
Mostly there's reflections of clouds and other things.
I know one thing that Joe is indefatigable. He will work and work and work and work until something is as good as it can be. And if his students get 2/3 of your indefatigability, they're very lucky because you have to be patient to make art.
That was an 8-syllable word. I'm not sure you can legally use those on air.
Now I think for any photographer,
Joe works hard.
the ultimate is getting a book published. And I have to think Red Hawk, like they made that dream come true. As I can always, and bringing the students into that also to give them that opportunity was incredible to be able to do that.
Well, that's what we are here for, is to nurture art to market, to bring art out that otherwise might get buried in the need to make money and be capitalist. But we love to sell books, so please visit redhawkpublications.com and order some books from us. We'll send them right to you when we can.
I was going to say too, I think me and Scott are planning on having some of these pictures on display in this coffee shop.
Yeah, we have a book launch scheduled as part of Poetry Hickory on December 12th. We always start at 6:15, and Joe and I will have the first 20 minutes. We'll share some poems, and I would love to have as many of the photos there as
Not
possible.
all 60 of them, but I'll do what I can do.
And,
We're going to have some prints for sale on
Yeah, I
these.
have some prints. I want
on
to
these. Good,
have
very
some of these
good.
available.
So if you want to own a piece of art that is in a book and you want to own the book, Taste Full Beans Coffee Shop on December 12th, starting punctually at 6:15. We'll have this information up on our website. You can check it on Tasteful Beans website as well, because Tasteful Beans is kind of like the unofficial sponsor of RedPubPod, because we talk about tasteful beans in every podcast we've done. Because if you want to see our books in person, Tasteful Beans is the home of those books right out there on the shelf where you can go take a look at a few of them. And if Scott doesn't have one, Scott will get it for you.
I think what's nice too, that's how me and Scott originally met. It was actually a previous owner, and I had some pictures on display, and I go in there, there's a poem attached to my photograph.
was that
and-
the jalopy or the pelicans?
The Pelicans.
The Pelicans.
Yeah. And I was like, this is really cool. And we started working with our students also. It was funny when he would give me poems, I'd give him pictures, he'd get the students pictures, and they would write a poem based off the picture, and it'd just go back and forth. That was pretty fun to do that too. But I like it all started there also.
Well, the book is called Round Here, Images from and Near Catawba County. I'd like to thank Scott Owens and Clayton Joe Young for joining us today. Thank you very much, Melanie Zimmerman, for joining me today when our other two colleagues are out doing important things in the community. My name is Robert Knipe, and I want to appreciate you guys for listening to us. So everybody needs to say, RedPubPod.
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 That was excellent, Joe, for the first time. Thank y'all very, very much. I hope that we hear from you again.
Thanks for listening to
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.
a podcast. Red Pub from Red Hawk Publications.
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.